CEO said, "You are nobody," and that same day he signed an $85 million deal. What he didn't know was that this nobody would become his biggest enemy. My name is Madison Crowe, and that morning I wasn't expecting a fight. I walked into the glass-walled conference room with my notes ready, thinking I'd be presenting the final adjustments on the contract I had personally negotiated. Instead, I found Victor Lang, the CEO, waiting with his usual polished smirk and a folder on the table that didn't look like mine. Beside him sat Claudia Reese, his loyal vice president, flipping a pen between her fingers like she was bored already. "Madison," Lang said smoothly, "we've reviewed your role in this project, and the board believes we need fresh leadership." I blinked. Fresh leadership? Victor, I'm the one who closed Marlowe Energy. Without me, there wouldn't even be a deal. He leaned back in his chair. "You're emotional. That's not leadership. You're talented, yes, but replaceable. This company needs vision. You're not it." Then came the line. The one that burned. "You're nobody." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were true, they weren't, but because he said them like fact, not insult. Just cold dismissal, like brushing dust off his sleeve. Claudia didn't even look at me. She pushed a plain envelope across the table. Severance. I didn't touch it. Instead, I glanced at Lang's phone as it buzzed. His eyes flicked down and I saw it, the confirmation of the $85 million transfer lighting up his screen. He smiled, just slightly. My deal. My work. My victory, handed to him like a trophy, with me erased from the picture. I forced a thin smile. So that's it? Fire me and pop champagne with my numbers on the wire. Exactly, Lang said without hesitation. I stood, sliding the chair back so it screeched against the floor. Every eye outside the glass wall turned toward us. Perfect. Let them see. I tucked my notebook under my arm, looked at Claudia, and said, "Good luck explaining how those contracts changed overnight." Her pen froze mid-tap. I walked out, ignoring the severance envelope. Past cubicles filled with people pretending not to watch, past the break room already stocked with champagne glasses. The celebration had begun, without me. Inside the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel. Rumpled hair, tired eyes, but sharper than ever. Lang thought he'd ended me, but he'd just given me a reason to begin. Carrying a cardboard box in front of your coworkers is corporate theater. Everyone pretends not to look, but every glance cuts like a knife. I stacked 5 years of my life into that box, one mug, a desk plant, and a few folders I hadn't returned yet. Around me, whispers floated like static. Some people avoided my eyes. Others smirked. And a few, mostly the ones I'd helped, looked guilty for staying silent. Halfway through packing, the announcement hit. The shared screen above the cubicles flashed bold numbers. Transfer confirmed, $85 million. Applause erupted. Champagne corks popped in the break room. The same room where I wasn't invited. I stared at the glowing screen and thought, my deal, my work, my late nights, and my name wiped off it like chalk in the rain. Someone approached my desk. Ethan Cole from accounting. Always nervous, always apologizing for things that weren't his fault. He looked at me like he wanted to say something heroic, but all that came out was, "Sorry, Madison. I didn't know they were gonna." I cut him off. "Don't worry. You'll still get your bonus." He winced. I closed the box and walked. The break room was overflowing when I passed. Claudia Reese stood in the middle, raising her glass like she'd conquered the world. To Dominion's future, she cheered. Everyone echoed her. I paused in the doorway, holding the box. Conversation stuttered. Claudia noticed and smiled, her kind of smile, sharp enough to cut. "Oh, Madison. Don't look so bitter. You'll land on your feet." It was a line meant to sting. I tilted my head and answered loud enough for the room. "Sure. I'll drink to your success, when you actually earn it." A ripple went through the crowd. Some laughed. Some gasped. Claudia's smile froze. I walked out, past the balloons, past the glittering glasses, out into the empty corridor. In the parking garage, the silence felt different, heavier, deliberate. I dropped the box into my back seat, sat behind the wheel, and stared at the concrete wall. I had no job. No paycheck. No allies inside that building. But I had something better. I had documents. Copies. Notes they thought I'd deleted. And I had more motive than ever. Lang thought the humiliation was the ending. It was the exit. And it was only step one. My apartment turned into a war room overnight. Papers sprawled across the kitchen table, sticky notes on the walls, laptop open with tabs I shouldn't technically have. The plant from my desk sat in the corner like a silent witness. I opened the folder I'd accidentally packed. Inside were draft contracts, printed emails, and my personal notes from negotiations. I flipped through page after page until one line stopped me cold. Consulting fee, $2 million. It wasn't in the original draft. I knew, because I'd written the first one by hand. The clause had been slipped in after the deal was basically done. Buried under vague language, hidden like trash under a rug. I compared signatures. The clients looked the same as always. Mine matched. But Lang's? Different pen stroke, different pressure. Subtle, but clear if you paid attention. Someone had re-signed documents. That wasn't incompetence. That was fraud. I pulled up my backup drive, the one IT never knew about. Every late-night email, every revision I'd sent to legal, every timestamp. I lined them up against the printed copies. The patterns emerged fast. My version, clean, standard, no consulting fees. Their version, new addendums, altered lines, inflated numbers. The timing, all edits happened after midnight, hours before official signatures. It was sloppy, arrogant, and traceable. I leaned back, staring at the chaos on my table. That's why Lang had called me nobody. That's why they pushed me out right when the deal closed. Not because I was irrelevant, but because I was dangerous. I grabbed my phone. There were two names I hadn't dialed in years, but I knew I had to now. The first was Aaron Blake, law school friend turned corporate attorney. The second was Miles Turner, former Dominion IT specialist, fired last year for refusing to cover up data mistakes. If anyone could help me sharpen this into a weapon, it was them. I sent 2 short messages. Need a meeting. Urgent. Dominion. Fraud. My phone buzzed seconds later. Aaron, where? Then Miles, I'm in. For the first time since Lang shoved that envelope across the table, I felt something stronger than anger. I felt ready. We met at a diner 2 blocks from Dominion's headquarters. Greasy counters, flickering neon sign, coffee that tasted like it had been reheated 10 times. Perfect place to talk without being noticed. Aaron Blake arrived first, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She dropped her briefcase on the booth seat and leaned in. Madison, you vanished for 2 years, and now you text me the word fraud? Start talking. I slid the folder across the table. Lang buried $2 million under a fake consulting fee. And that's just what I found so far. She flipped through the papers, her face hardening with every page. This isn't sloppy accounting. This is deliberate. Before I could answer, the door creaked open and Miles Turner walked in. Same leather jacket, same chip on his shoulder since the day Reese pushed him out of Dominion. He dropped into the booth opposite Aaron. All right, Crow, he said, cracking his knuckles. What's the job? Simple, I replied. Lang stole millions. I want proof airtight enough to crush him. Miles smirked. Finally. Payback. Aaron shot him a look. This isn't about revenge. If you do this wrong, Madison, they'll bury you. But if you do it right, she tapped the folder. You'll bury them. We divided roles fast. Aaron would build the legal framework, only facts, no speculation. Miles would pull digital trails, badge logs, printer histories, calendar metadata. And me? I'd dig through paper contracts, archives, and my personal notes. Aaron's voice was steady, clinical. We need 3 things: altered contracts, digital fingerprints, and financial transfers. With those, regulators or the board won't be able to look away. Miles leaned back. And I already know where to start. Dominion never shut down my backdoor access. Their IT's still running on the same weak firewall I told Reese to fix 2 years ago. Idiots. I looked at both of them. For the first time since being fired, I didn't feel alone. Lang thought I was nobody. But now nobody had an attorney, a hacker, and enough evidence to turn $85 million into his downfall. 2 nights later, I walked back into Dominion's building like I still belonged there. My badge should have been deactivated, but Miles was right, the system was sloppy. 1 quick code from him, and the green light blinked. The office was different at night. No noise, no chatter. Just the hum of air vents and the occasional clack of pipes behind the walls. I headed straight for the archive room. The door had a keypad. Miles whispered in my ear through a burner headset, "Try 0421. Reese's birthday." She's predictable. It worked. Inside, rows of metal cabinets stretched into the dark. I pulled open drawers labeled Marlowe Energy. Pages stacked tight, clipped with signatures. I laid them out on the table. My hands moved fast, scan, photo, compare. And then I saw it. Original draft, clean, standard rates, no extras. Final copy, same format, but a new page inserted. Addendum. Authorized by Reese. Approved by Lang. Value, $2 million, listed as consulting. The paper still smelled like fresh toner. That meant it hadn't been here long. Got it, I whispered. Miles responded immediately. Batch logs confirm Reese was in that room at 12:14 a.m. 2 nights ago. That's when she planted it. I kept flipping. More contracts, same trick. Different vendors, different amounts, always hidden as services. Together they added up to millions. I photographed everything. Every page, every signature, every staple mark. Evidence wasn't just the words, it was the physical trail. Before leaving, I slid everything back into place. Couldn't risk them knowing someone had been here. Back in my car, I spread the photos across my laptop screen. The pattern was undeniable. Deliberate edits, fake addendums, inflated payments. I sent copies to Erin. Her reply came in seconds. This is it. Keep collecting. We're close to locking them in. Lang thought firing me erased the risk. He didn't realize I was building the file that could erase him. By now the evidence was piling up, but raw files meant nothing if they stayed in my apartment. Erin's advice was clear. Test the system. See how Dominion reacts when the first stone gets thrown. Miles created a ghost email account, routed through enough proxies to look like it came from anywhere but us. At midnight, we sent the first packet. Attached, one altered contract, the addendum Reese had planted, and the badge log tying her to the archive room the same night. No explanation. Just the documents. Recipient, Dominion's internal compliance team. We didn't wait long. By 9 a.m., Miles texted, "System alert, compliance pulled restricted files." Reese triggered 3 emergency meetings already. At 11 a.m., Erin called. "I've got a friend in legal. She says Reese is storming around the office, accusing junior staff of leaking. They don't even know what they're looking for yet." By afternoon, Lang canceled his scheduled press appearance. That told me everything. He felt the heat. The leak wasn't about exposure, it was about pressure. And the pressure was working. From my window that night, I watched Dominion's tower glowing across the city. Behind those glass walls, panic was spreading. The champagne flutes from my firing party were probably still in the trash, sticky with warm bubbles, while Lang tried to explain why his vice president was showing up in midnight badge logs. I leaned back, my notebook open, the copies stacked neatly beside me. This was just the first cut. And I was ready to keep cutting. The leak hit Dominion like a virus. By morning, the building felt different, restless, suspicious. Miles' contacts in IT fed us details. Compliance flagged the contract as anomaly. Reese ordered full access audits. Lang canceled all non-essential meetings and pulled his inner circle into a locked boardroom. By noon, the whispers spread. Employees talked in hallways, eyes darting at closed doors. Everyone wanted to know who slipped the papers out. Reese took the lead. She interrogated managers one by one, pressing them for names. Who had access to archives? Who stayed late this week? Her voice carried down the halls. She wasn't looking for answers, she was looking for someone to blame. Lang, on the other hand, played calm. He sent out a company-wide memo: "Integrity is our foundation. Any attempt to damage Dominion will be met with full consequences." Corporate fluff, but everyone could read the threat under it. At 3 p.m., a security team swept the archive room. Miles confirmed through his back door that they pulled badge logs, but the system showed what we wanted them to see: Reese's midnight swipes. No edits, no traces. Just her own digital fingerprints staring back. By 5 p.m., Dominion's floor was silent. No laughter, no chatter. People typed softer, walked faster. From my apartment, I tracked it all through Miles' feed. Reese was panicking. Lang was posturing. And the staff? They were already doubting their leaders. I poured myself a drink and wrote one line in my notebook. They don't know it yet, but the board will. The reaction was loud, desperate, chaotic. Exactly what I wanted. Dominion didn't stay on defense for long. By the next morning, the counterattack had started. At 9 a.m., my inbox lit up with a letter from Dominion's legal department. Formal, polished, threatening, return all confidential property immediately. Any failure to comply will result in legal action. I forwarded it to Erin. Her reply was short: ignore. They're bluffing. No proof. By noon, Reese had escalated. A press release hit the wires. Dominion confirms internal disruption caused by a disgruntled former employee spreading false information. My name wasn't in print, but everyone knew. Colleagues texted me, some curious, some afraid. One message read, "Madison, they're saying you hacked the system. Careful." At 4 p.m., I spotted a black SUV idling near my apartment building. Same car, same tinted windows, every night that week. Not subtle. I called Miles. "They're watching me." "Good," he said. "That means they're scared." The pushback wasn't about stopping me. It was about shaking me, making me second guess. But intimidation has an expiration date. That evening, Erin called with an update from her contact on the board. They're asking questions. They don't trust Lang's answers. Keep pressing. So I did. I closed my blinds, turned off the lights, and laid out the next packet of evidence. This time, not just one contract. A series of them, each with Reese's addendums, each tied to Lang's approvals. The first leak rattled them. The next one would break them. The SUV didn't move for 3 nights. Same spot across from my apartment, same tinted windows, engine humming low like a warning. On the 4th night, another car joined it, a black sedan with 2 men inside, pretending to scroll their phones. They weren't watching the building. They were watching me. At 6:15 p.m., I left for groceries. One of them followed, half a block behind. At the corner store, he didn't buy anything. He just stood by the freezer section, phone in hand, eyes flicking up every time I moved. I kept my pace steady, bagged my food, and walked home. By the time I hit my street, the SUV's headlights blinked on. I called Miles. "They've escalated." He didn't sound surprised. "Ellison's burning money to keep you under pressure. Don't react. Cameras are in your favor." But I wasn't going to wait around. The next morning, I drove straight to a public co-working space downtown. I chose a seat by the window, laptop open, documents spread. From there, I had line of sight to the parking lot. 15 minutes later, the sedan rolled in. Same 2 men. They parked where they thought I couldn't see. Miles patched into Dominion's internal systems while I kept watch. "Check this," he said. "Their security team just pulled logs on your old badge again. They're trying to prove you broke in." "They can't," I said flatly. "Exactly. Because Reese's badge is the one that actually did it." By noon, Erin arrived with her briefcase. She didn't bother sitting down. "I've spoken with my contact on the board. They know surveillance is happening. They're angry. Lang's wasting company resources chasing you instead of explaining the missing millions." That was the leverage I needed. At 3 p.m., I left the co-working space and drove 3 blocks in circles. The sedan tailed me. I pulled into a police station lot, parked, and walked inside. The sedan kept moving. They didn't stop. Didn't dare. Message delivered. That night, I reviewed everything with Erin and Miles. The surveillance wasn't just intimidation, it was evidence of Lang's desperation. If the board learned he was burning cash on private tails while auditors circled, it would look like panic. I typed one sentence into my notebook. Surveillance is not control. Surveillance is proof of fear. Lang wanted me to feel hunted. All he did was confirm I was winning. The leaks had Lang cornered, but he still had one card left, the next transfer. $30 million scheduled in less than 10 days. If that money moved, it would vanish into a maze of fake vendors before the board could stop it. We met in Erin's office to map the timeline. She spread contracts across the table, neat tabs marking every altered clause. Miles patched into Dominion's finance systems through his back door, his screen glowing with transaction schedules. "Here," Miles said, pointing. "Installment B, $30 million. Destination account looks clean on the surface, Bank of New Haven. But trace it further and you hit a shell company in Delaware. Name's nothing, Graymont Consulting. Just another front." I leaned over. "And after Delaware? Cayman Islands. Once it lands there, it's untouchable." Erin's voice was sharp. "Then we stop it before the wire. We build the evidence package and put it on the board's desks before the transfer date. If they stall, we go federal." The countdown had begun. Day 1. Miles confirmed Graymont Consulting had no employees, no office, just a P.O. box. Proof of laundering. Day 2. Erin drafted a clean summary for regulators. Every number tied to a document, every signature cross-checked. Day 3. I went back to the archive, careful, fast. Found 3 more contracts with the same midnight addendums. Always Reese's initials, always Lang's approval. The more we pulled, the more the puzzle fit. But Lang wasn't standing still. On day 4, Dominion IT locked down staff accounts and installed monitoring software. Miles smirked at the news. They're chasing phantoms. My entry point isn't even on their radar. Day 6. Reese was spotted leaving the office at 3 a.m. The same black SUV outside my building reappeared near the archives that night. Lang was desperate to contain the cracks. Day 7. Aaron's contact on the board sent one line. Directors want answers. Lang stalling. Day 8. Market whispers started. Dominion stock slipped 5%. Too many questions, not enough confidence. And through it all, the clock kept ticking. Every day closer to that $30 million wire. On day 9, Aaron closed the binder with a snap. Tomorrow, we deliver. If the board ignores this, then we go nuclear, SEC, press, full exposure. I wrote it down in my notebook. 10 days. 30 million. One chance to cut the fuse. Lang thought time was on his side. He didn't realize the clock was mine now. The night before we went to the board, Miles said one thing. We need one last nail. Something that ties Lang directly to the money, not just Reese. So we dug deeper. Miles sat up in his apartment, multiple monitors lighting his face. I joined by video, Aaron on speaker. He pulled up transaction chains, layer by layer, moving past shell companies like peeling an onion. Here's the key, he said. Approval chains. Every wire transfer has to be greenlit by 2 executives. Reese signed yes. But who is the second? He dug through logs, timestamps, archived approvals Dominion thought were buried. At 2:17 a.m., he froze the screen. There. It was a digital authorization. User, Vlang01. Approval, $5 million, routed to Graymont Consulting. Victor Lang himself, Aaron said, her voice sharp. That's not delegation. That's him pushing the button. Miles kept going. 3 more transactions surfaced. Smaller amounts, $750, $000, $1. $2 million, $3 million, all greenlit by Lang's account. Enough to establish a pattern. Enough to show intent. But we didn't stop at numbers. We needed physical proof. I went back to the archive the next day, slipping past the same lazy security. This time, I wasn't hunting contracts. I was hunting signatures. And I found them. Invoices stamped approved with Lang's initials. Not copies. Originals. Ink pressed into the paper. I photographed each page close up. The angle of his strokes, the indentations where the pen dug too hard. You couldn't fake that consistency. When I handed the images to Erin, she didn't smile. She just stacked them neatly. This is it. Digital plus paper. They can't claim ignorance now. By midnight, our evidence file wasn't just strong. It was bulletproof. Lang's fingerprints on both sides, the computer and the pen. Miles leaned back, exhausted but grinning. Tomorrow, they'll see it. And when they do, Lang's empire doesn't just crack. It caves. I closed my notebook and wrote one line. Direct tie achieved. No escape. The deep dig was over. The next step was impact. The board of directors met every other Thursday at 7 a.m. sharp. Lang prided himself on punctuality. This time, his reputation worked against him. At 6:30, Aaron's paralegal delivered 12 sealed envelopes to the boardroom. Inside, our evidence file. Altered contracts, badge logs, transaction approvals, and Lang's digital authorizations. No commentary. Just the facts. By 6:55, directors were already flipping through pages. The silence in that room was heavier than any speech. At 7:03, Lang walked in, Claudia Reese at his side. He froze when he saw the binders on the table. One director slid a page across to him. Explain this. Lang tried. He blamed clerical errors. Said Reese overstepped. Claimed systems glitched. But the timestamps didn't lie. His account approved transfers at 2:17 a.m. His signature sat on paper invoices. At 7:40, the first director pushed back. You want us to believe your VP planted addendums, faked your login, and forged your handwriting, all without you knowing? Lang stayed silent. Reese lowered her eyes. By 8:10, the board voted for an independent audit. Quiet, efficient, unanimous. News traveled fast. By noon, Dominion staff whispered about irregularities and compliance reviews. By 3 p.m., internal emails circulated instructing departments to cooperate fully with auditors. The crack had formed. Stock dipped another 4% that day. Clients called for reassurance. Lang canceled 2 public events. Reese shut herself in her office. From my apartment window, I watched Dominion's tower glowing in the dusk. On the surface, it still looked intact. But I knew the truth. The board didn't trust Lang anymore. And once that trust broke, money and loyalty would follow. The first crack had opened. And cracks never stay small. The audit order turned Dominion upside down. Lang and Reese were out of control, trying to smother a fire that was already in the walls. The morning after the board vote, Dominion's PR team released a statement. Dominion faces baseless allegations from a former employee with a personal agenda. Leadership remains strong and committed to growth. They didn't print my name, but everyone knew. My phone lit up with messages from old colleagues, half curious, half afraid. By noon, the smear campaign was everywhere. Anonymous blogs popped up accusing me of data theft, emotional instability, even rumors about falsifying my resume. Reese had weaponized gossip, feeding it to anyone willing to print. I didn't flinch. Aaron had warned me this was coming. They'll try to make you the story. Don't engage. Every word you say gives them oxygen. But their moves got uglier. That same afternoon, I found another envelope taped to my apartment door. Inside, a cease and desist letter, drafted by Dominion's lawyers. Pages of threats, claims of unauthorized possession of intellectual property, promises of immediate legal action if I didn't comply. I dropped the envelope on my table untouched. Empty noise. They couldn't sue me without exposing the very documents they wanted buried. Still, the pressure mounted. The SUV returned outside my building. A second car rotated in shifts. I spotted the same faces in my grocery store, in the cafe across the street. Watching, waiting, hoping I'd panic. Instead, I gathered more. Miles traced Dominion's internal chat logs. At 2:43 a.m., Reese messaged Lang directly, "Need to lock this down before auditors expand scope. Madison won't stop." His reply was blunt, "Handle it." That was gold. Proof not just of fraud, but of retaliation. Meanwhile, Aaron's board contact confirmed directors were furious at Lang for wasting company resources on PR battles instead of addressing financial irregularities. His leadership was slipping hour by hour. The desperation showed in his face, too. At a press briefing 2 days later, cameras caught him sweating under the lights, eyes darting when asked about the audit. He dodged questions, repeated scripted lines, and ended the session early. I saved the footage, added it to my growing file. Every attack they launched, press releases, lawyers, cars on my street, wasn't control. It was proof of weakness. Lang wanted me cornered. Instead, he looked like the one trapped. And the more desperate he became, the faster the walls closed in. Lang didn't call me directly. That would have looked weak. Instead, I got the message through a third party, an old colleague from operations who showed up at my apartment unannounced. "Victor wants to meet," he said, shifting from foot to foot like he hated being there. "Tomorrow. 8 a.m. His office. Just you." I almost laughed. Lang never used intermediaries. The fact that he sent a messenger meant one thing. He was rattled. I told Aaron and Miles immediately. Aaron was firm. "He'll try to buy you. Do not agree, and whatever happens, record it." The next morning, I walked into Dominion like I owned the place. Security didn't stop me, the board hadn't banned my access, and Lang couldn't afford the optics of dragging me out. Employees froze as I passed, some whispering, some staring openly. His office door was open. He stood by the window, hands behind his back, the skyline at his shoulders. The room smelled of leather and stale cologne. Claudia Reese wasn't there. Just him. "Madison," he said smoothly, though his voice was thinner than usual. "Sit." I stayed standing. He sighed, circled his desk, and placed a thick envelope on the glass surface. "This can all go away. No more lawyers, no more noise. You walk, and this is yours." I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "How much?" "7 figures," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Tax-free. Enough to put all this behind you. Enough to change your life." I let silence hang, watching him sweat beneath his polished exterior. "You think I'm doing this for money?" His jaw tightened. "Everyone does it for money. You, me, the board, it's always money." I stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "Then you're wrong. I'm not after money, Victor. I'm after you." The mask slipped for half a second. His smile faltered. His hand tapped the desk like he needed control back. "You're making a mistake," he said. I leaned in just enough for him to see I wasn't bluffing. No, Victor. You made the mistake the night you called me nobody. I turned, walked out, and left the envelope unopened on his desk. Employees watched me leave, their eyes flicking between me and the closed door behind me. By the time I reached the lobby, I had what I needed. Not the cash. Not the envelope. The recording in my pocket, Lang offering a bribe to silence me. That was worth more than 7 figures. That was the weapon to end him. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I pressed play. Lang's voice filled my earbuds, smooth, but desperate. 7 figures. Walk away. No lawyers. No noise. Every word was clear, every pause recorded. The kind of evidence you don't argue with. I sent the file to Erin before I even left the building. Her reply came within minutes. This is it. Direct obstruction. We'll make sure the board hears it first. That afternoon, Erin and I sat in her office while she drafted the memo. Clean, surgical, impossible to misinterpret. The subject line read, Unauthorized offer from CEO Victor Lang. Attached was the audio, plus a transcript. No commentary. Just his voice hanging itself. Miles layered protection. 3 encrypted drives, 3 different locations. Even if Lang's people tried to scrub one, 2 more would survive. This recording outlives all of us, he said flatly. By evening, the memo landed in every director's inbox. At 7:12 p.m., Erin's board contact texted, We've heard the tape. Emergency session tomorrow. He's finished. While Dominion's leadership tried to keep calm, the walls were already buckling. Staff noticed the shift, closed blinds in Lang's office, Reese avoiding eye contact in hallways, compliance officers walking the floors with clipboards. At 10 p.m., Dominion's PR team released a vague statement about miscommunication. But no one believed it. Investors pulled another 6% out overnight. I sat at my kitchen table, the envelope he'd slid across his desk still replaying in my head. He thought I'd fold. He thought I'd sell silence. Instead, I turned his bribe into a bullet. The refusal wasn't about pride. It was about proof. Lang wasn't just a thief anymore. He was on record trying to bury his crimes with money. And tomorrow, the board would have no choice but to cut him loose. The board meeting started at 7 sharp. By 7:15, Lang's career was already hanging by a thread. Erin's contact gave us the rundown in real time. The directors played the recording. Lang's voice filled the room. 7 figures. Walk away. No lawyers. No noise. No one interrupted. No one defended him. When it ended, the silence was heavier than the words themselves. Lang tried to explain. He called it a settlement offer, claimed it was standard practice to protect the company. But the transcript was too clear he hadn't mentioned Dominion once. It was personal, designed to silence me. At 7:42, the first director spoke. Victor, this is bribery. Plain and simple. Another added, we are liable if we allow this to continue. By 8 o'clock, the board voted unanimously to suspend his executive powers pending investigation. Claudia Reese tried to protest, but her name was all over the addendums. Every arrow pointed to her as his accomplice. By noon, the news leaked. Headlines spread fast. Dominion CEO under suspension amid bribery allegations. Vice President implicated in contract irregularities. The market reacted instantly. Shares dropped 14% in a single day. Clients started pulling out of active deals. The $30 million transfer was officially frozen. Inside Dominion, panic turned into chaos. Compliance officers flooded departments. Auditors demanded files, assistants shredded documents in plain sight. Miles fed me updates through his back door. They're wiping hard drives, purging chat logs. Too late. We already have copies. At 3:15, Reese's assistant walked out of the building carrying a banker's box. Witnesses said she was crying. By 4 o'clock, Reese herself disappeared from public view, skipping all scheduled meetings. Lang, meanwhile, stayed locked in his office until security changed the locks. He was escorted out through the service entrance, no cameras, no crowd. Just a man stripped of power, clinging to a silence that couldn't save him anymore. That evening, Erin, Miles, and I met in the same diner where this started. Erin placed the day's newspaper on the table. Lang's face stared back at us from the front page, the headline bold above it. Domino effect, Erin said. One push, and everything falls. She was right. The severance envelope, the insults, the bribes, each was a piece of the structure he thought would hold forever. And now it was collapsing in sequence, one failure triggering the next. I closed my notebook and wrote one line. Lang suspended. Reese cornered. 30 million saved. Game not over. Because once dominoes fall, they don't stop until the table is clear. By dawn the next day, Dominion was no longer Lang's company. The board released an official statement at 6:45 a.m. Effective immediately, Victor Lang is suspended from all executive duties pending the outcome of an independent investigation. No embellishments, no spin. Just the corporate death sentence stressed in polite words. By 8 o'clock, media trucks surrounded Dominion's tower. Reporters crowded the sidewalks, cameras aimed at every exit. Employees slipped inside with heads down, whispering into phones. The mood wasn't fear, it was disbelief. Lang had always seemed untouchable. Now he was radioactive. At 9:20, security escorted him out. No press conference, no staged farewell. Just two guards walking him through the underground garage, past flashing bulbs and shouted questions. His face was stone, but his clenched jaw told the story. Reese tried to hold her ground longer. She spent the morning pacing her office, blinds drawn, while compliance officers knocked on her door demanding files. At 11 o'clock, she left through the lobby. No cameras followed her. No one clapped. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Inside, Dominion was unraveling. Auditors camped in conference rooms, walls lined with boxes of seized documents. Compliance pulled entire teams off projects to sift through transactions. Assistants carried shredded paper bags to dumpsters, ignoring the fact that shredding now looked like guilt. Miles kept me updated from his rig. They're locking down servers. Lang's account is disabled. Reese's too. IT just revoked 30 executive-level passwords in one sweep. By afternoon, Dominion stock had plunged another 11%. Clients froze negotiations. A multinational partner issued a statement suspending cooperation, pending clarity. I watched all of it unfold from Erin's office. She was methodical, annotating every headline, every board announcement. The audit hasn't even begun, she said. And already, they're bleeding. That night, I drove past the tower. The lobby lights were still on, but the building looked hollow, stripped of its arrogance. Lang once told me I was nobody. Now he was locked out of the company he built, reduced to a headline, his empire shrinking by the hour. Suspension wasn't the end. It was the opening act of collapse, and I intended to see the rest. Dominion's collapse didn't happen in silence. It happened in real time under floodlights, with the entire market watching. The morning after Lang's suspension, auditors took over the 14th floor. Glass walls filled with bankers' boxes, stacks of contracts, laptops sealed in evidence bags. Employees lined up outside, waiting to be called in for interviews. Nobody joked in the hallways anymore. Every step echoed like it belonged in a courthouse. By 10 o'clock, the first leak hit the press. Dominion had funneled at least $47 million through shell vendors over the past 3 years. Names like Graymont Consulting and Orbridge Systems appeared on the screen, companies with no staff, no offices, no history. Reporters didn't need much imagination. This was laundering, plain and simple. The stock dropped 18% in 2 hours. At noon, one of Dominion's top clients announced it was terminating its contract. Their statement was blunt: "We cannot maintain a relationship with an organization under investigation for fraud." That contract alone had been worth nearly $120 million over 5 years. Inside the tower, panic turned physical. Staff packed personal items into boxes. Security escorted whole teams out as projects were frozen. Departments that had bragged about billion-dollar pipelines yesterday were silent now, blinds pulled shut, phones ringing unanswered. Reese tried to fight back. She issued an internal memo blaming clerical irregularities and urging employees to stand united. But nobody believed her anymore. When auditors published her midnight badge logs in their preliminary findings, her authority evaporated. By 3 p.m., her office was locked, nameplate removed. Lang's name was next. The board, desperate to contain the damage, stripped him of all access. His portrait, which had hung in the lobby, was quietly taken down. Employees filmed the removal and uploaded it online. Within an hour, it was trending under the tag #FallenCEO. The dominoes kept falling. Dominion's main lender froze its credit line. Vendors demanded early payments. Investors filed class action lawsuits. Miles tracked the collapse from his screens. Cash flow negative by end of quarter, he said. They're done. Even if the fraud case disappeared, the numbers alone will bury them. Erin stayed cold and clinical, cataloging each failure for the regulators. This isn't just a scandal, she said. It's systemic rot. Once the SEC takes jurisdiction, Dominion won't survive. By dusk, the building looked like a crime scene. News vans ringed the street. Former employees spilled out carrying boxes, some crying, some relieved. The company that had once celebrated an $85 million deal with champagne now looked like the set of an evacuation. I parked across the street, watching the lights flicker in the upper floors. 5 days earlier, I had walked out of that same tower with a box of my own, humiliated. Now, I was watching the empire collapse under the weight of its own lies. Lang called me nobody. But it was my evidence, my files, my persistence, that had flipped the first domino. Dominion wasn't being dismantled by regulators or competitors. It was being dismantled by the truth. And I had delivered it. I hadn't planned to walk back into Dominion. After the box, the whispers, the severance envelope, I swore I'd never set foot in that lobby again. But a week after Lang's suspension and Reese's removal, I received the call. The board wanted me in. Not as an employee, not as a victim, but as a cooperating witness. At 8 a.m., I pulled into the underground garage. Security stopped me, not to block, but to escort. My badge was dead, but I didn't need it anymore. My clearance now came from higher than Lang had ever dreamed. The lobby felt alien. Reporters crowded the street outside, flashes bursting every time the revolving doors opened. Inside, employees moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. Some froze when they saw me, recognizing the woman they'd read about in leaked blogs and internal memos. The same nobody their CEO had mocked. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I walked straight through, escorted to the 14th floor where the auditors had set up camp. The conference room was unrecognizable. Gone were the celebratory banners and catered spreads. Now the walls were lined with evidence boxes, laptops sealed with chain of custody stickers, binders thicker than legal coats. Auditors filled the room, voices low, pens scratching. One director looked up as I entered. "Ms. Crow, thank you for coming. Your cooperation has been invaluable." The weight of that sentence hit me. Just days ago, they'd let Lang erase me without hesitation. Now they were leaning on me to keep their company from total collapse. I gave my statement clearly, fact by fact. Midnight addendums. Badge logs. Lang's approvals. Reese's planted clauses. And finally, the recording. Every piece laid bare, no theatrics, no exaggeration. The room stayed silent as auditors reviewed the files. When I finished, the director nodded once. "That will be all for now. You've done more than enough." On my way out, I passed the break room. The same place where Claudia had raised a glass to my erasure. The champagne bottles were still there, half empty, shoved into a corner fridge. Dust clung to the labels. No one had touched them since. That was the real victory, not applause, not recognition. The silence. The emptiness of their celebration. Proof that their triumph had rotted into humiliation. I left the building without looking back. Dominion was no longer my world. But I had returned on my terms. Lang was gone. Reese was gone. And the company that had called me nobody now understood exactly who I was. Dominion collapsed faster than anyone predicted. By the end of the quarter, auditors confirmed what we had uncovered. Tens of millions funneled through shell companies, falsified contracts, fraudulent signatures, bribes to cover it all. Lang tried to deny. Reese tried to vanish. Neither succeeded. Their names hit headlines, their reputations burned, their careers finished. And me? I didn't get my old job back. I didn't want it. I got something better, perspective. When Lang called me nobody, he revealed more about himself than about me. To him, people were tools, useful until they weren't. But that's the flaw of people like him. They mistake silence for weakness, compliance for loyalty. They forget that the person in the corner, the one they dismiss, is usually the one who knows exactly where the cracks are. I learned that power doesn't come from titles or glass offices or 8-figure contracts. Power comes from knowledge, from patience, from pressing the right fault line at the right time and watching the whole structure fall. So here's my question for you. If you were standing in my place, with the envelope on the desk, the bribe in your hand, the humiliation still burning, what would you have done? Walked away quietly? Or pushed back until the empire collapsed? Because in the end, every story lives as long as it is remembered. A like is your mark on the story, and a subscription is your ticket to the next one.